The 5 mental attacks Librans face daily. Beware of the last one. Do you think you know what it means to be too kind? What if the piece everyone praises about you is just the part Libra lets show, while inside every day, 5 silent mental attacks fight over every decision, every word, every second of peace you think you feel? The last one is the most dangerous of all because nobody ever asked for it to happen. By the end of this video, something you've always mistaken for weakness will make sense in a way it never has before. Because there's something no one told you about being a Libra. While you're there, keeping everything in balance, there's a mental attack happening inside you all the time. Silent, constant, invisible to those on the outside, but deafening to those who live it inside. The first of these attacks is simple to name and almost impossible to turn off. The fear of being the cause of someone else's discomfort. Someone frowns across the table, and before reason can process the motive, the Libra body has already reacted. You've already felt guilty. You've already started internally to go over the last few sentences spoken, searching for the mistake. It's like carrying a microphone so sensitive it picks up even the awkward silence of a room. A silence that for anyone else would just be a pause. For Libra, it's an alarm signal. And the strangest thing is that this alarm goes off even when there's no real reason. Someone might just be tired, distracted, thinking about something completely different. But Libra has already assumed emotional responsibility for that moment. They've already decided, without proof, that the other person's discomfort is their fault. Why does this happen? Why does feeling the discomfort of others hurt more than one's own discomfort? There is an answer, and it has nothing to do with weakness. It has to do with a mechanism so ancient that Libra doesn't even remember when it was installed. A mechanism that learned, long before any astrological theory, that keeping others comfortable was the safest way to stay around, to remain accepted, to continue existing within the group without creating friction. Notice something. That first attack never comes alone. It comes disguised as politeness, sensitivity, a kind heart. Nobody calls it an attack. They call it kindness. But kindness doesn't leave your chest tight at 3 in the morning, reliving a conversation that ended hours ago. Kindness doesn't make your body tense up again when faced with a message that took a long time to be answered. And if that first attack is already exhausting on its own, what happens when it starts to repeat itself, situation after situation, until it becomes an automatic pattern that no longer even passes through consciousness? It stops being an isolated event and becomes a kind of permanent surveillance, a radar that never turns off, always spinning, always calculating the effect of each word even before it leaves the mouth. It is at this point that the Libra's mind begins to do something even more dangerous than simply sensing the discomfort of others. It begins to file things away. Every gesture, every silence, every curt response becomes evidence stored for a judgment that hasn't even happened yet. It has truly begun, but Libra itself is already rehearsing alone in its head even before falling asleep. A trial without a judge, without a deadline, without an end. Only the accused, repeating its own case for the 100th time. It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose doesn't treat this inner tribunal as a flaw to be hidden. It treats it as a mechanism of perception that, once understood, ceases to judge and begins to guide. It's a mental attitude, not a ready-made formula. The ability to find real balance without getting lost, trying to balance the lives of others before one's own. Any Libra recognizes this instinct immediately, to take care of the environment first, and only then, if there's room left, of oneself. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose exists precisely to reverse this order. And if you've made it this far, it's quite likely that you still have that judgment going through your head, trying to understand where it comes from and why it never lets up. This discomfort you feel now is no coincidence. It's the exact moment to act while your perception is still open, before routine stifles that clarity again. The link is in the first pinned comment, but be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Before we continue, which of these mental attacks have you experienced this week, even if you couldn't name them? Write them in the comments below. And that's where things get serious, because this file of evidence doesn't just sit in some drawer of memory. It becomes the material of a courtroom that never closes its doors. A room where Libra is, at the same time, the defendant explaining himself, the judge who is never convinced, and the audience watching everything in silence, nodding their heads. Have you ever relived a conversation from days ago, mentally editing each sentence, imagining better versions of what you said? This isn't just an annoying habit. It's the court at work. It's the trial reopening its own case, again, without any new evidence, just to make sure, again, that the everything is fine verdict still stands. The problem is that this court never delivers a final verdict. It postpones. It asks for more evidence. It summons witnesses who never even existed. And while all this is happening inside, outside, Libra continues smiling, responding to messages, appearing calm, because part of this court's sentence is precisely to never let anyone realize that the trial is underway. But here's the question nobody asks. If there's a judge, a defendant, and an audience, and they're all the same person, who ultimately is being protected by this endless process? Because an endless trial doesn't exist to punish. It exists to postpone a sentence that the person is too afraid to hear. There's something curious about this type of court. It's never impartial. It enters the session with the verdict almost ready, and yet it insists on repeating the trial, as if another round of arguments could change anything. It doesn't. The body already knows this, and that's why it gets so tired, not of what happened, but of judging again something that has already been judged 100 times before, always with the same result. That inner tribunal you just recognized doesn't disappear on its own with time. It just learns to speak more softly. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose shows in a practical way how a Libra can end this judgment without sentencing, exchanging the search for a perfect verdict for the confidence that they have already done enough. It's not about silencing the mind, it's about giving it another function, that of a guide, not an accuser. It's worth understanding this while the memory of the judgment is still fresh in your mind, before routine stifles that clarity again. The link is in the first pinned comment. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. This same mechanism, that of postponing a decision, appears in a different way when the subject is decision-making. Every time Libra needs to choose between two options, something inside them freezes. And it's not because they don't know what they want. It's because they already know and are afraid of what happens after they find out. Imagine two identical doors, side by side. There's no label indicating what's behind each one. Your hand reaches for the doorknob, hesitates, pulls back, reaches for it again. It's not the door that's frightening, it's the possibility of choosing wrong and discovering it too late to go back. But here lies a silent trap. While Libra weighs both sides, comparing pros and cons that have already been compared 10 times before, time passes, and the decision that seemed urgent becomes a hostage of the analysis itself. They don't choose wrong, they simply don't choose, and let life decide for them a little later, in a way that hurts more than any choice would have. What if the wrong door had never existed? What if the two doors actually led to different versions of an equally valid life? But the fear of making a mistake never allowed that possibility to even be considered. Notice that nobody teaches Libra this when they're a child. Nobody sits down and explains that it's okay to make mistakes and start over. that an imperfect choice is still better than no choice at all. What they learn most of the time is the opposite. That wrong decisions are costly, cost approval, cost the comfortable place they've earned by being the one who never causes problems. So the hand remains there, still between the two doorknobs, while the clock keeps turning on its own. And while these decisions remain stalled, someone needs to keep functioning outside. They need to smile in meetings, say something kind at parties, appear calm when inside the scales are tipping much more to one side than the other. That's where the fourth attack comes in, the mask that should have already been put to rest but remains on stage. You have a specific kind of tiredness that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from pretending everything is fine while doing anything. It's the invisible effort of maintaining an expression of balance even when the internal weight has already exceeded the limit. Like an actor who forgot the show is over but keeps repeating lines because nobody told them the lights have gone out. The problem with this mask is that it works too well. It works so well that even LIBRA himself sometimes forgets he's wearing it. He starts to believe in his own persona of balance until the day the weight inside grows too much and the mask can no longer bear alone what was meant to be shared, felt, said aloud. And what happens when that mask finally cracks? It's not a dramatic collapse like in the movie. It's quieter than that, and even harder to explain to those who only know the always balanced version. Sometimes it's just an off-key comment, a drier than usual response, a tiredness that no one knows where it came from. Small cracks escaping before the mask can mend itself. And it is precisely there that Libras tend to feel most guilty, as if showing this crack were a character flaw and not the body simply asking in the way it can for some rest. This mask that silently cracks is perhaps the clearest sign that something needs to change fundamentally, not just superficially. If you combine the three attacks so far, the fear of others' discomfort, the internal tribunal, and the cracking mask, you'll find a common root, too uncomfortable to ignore. They all stem from the same place. Libra learned to exist through the gaze of others, long before learning to exist through their own gaze. Think of a mirror. A regular mirror only reflects when there is light and someone in front of it. Alone in the dark, it shows nothing because there is no image to reflect. Now imagine a person who learned too early to function like that, only feeling that they truly exist when someone is looking, evaluating, reacting. Without an audience, without approval, without outside reaction, some part of them simply doesn't know what to do with their own silence. That's why being alone, for many Librans, is more difficult than it seems from the outside. It's not loneliness in the common sense. It's the strange feeling of being in a room without any mirror, not knowing for a moment exactly who is there. Is there a version of Libra that exists even without an audience? Who feels self-worth without needing a reflection confirming it every second? The answer is unsettling, because it requires admitting that for a long time, he lent others the power to decide whether he deserved to exist in that way or another. And the most curious thing is that this dependence on the reflection of others rarely stems from vanity. It almost always comes from the opposite, from an insecurity so old that it has learned to disguise itself as generosity, as genuine interest in others, as attentiveness. It's easier to ask, "And you, how are you?" than to honestly answer the same question about oneself. Recognizing that you've lent others the power to define you is in itself the beginning of reclaiming that power. The divine path that guides your zodiac, signed to a life of purpose, proposes precisely this path back inward, building a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on an audience, approval, or the reflection of others. A way of existing that doesn't need witnesses to be real. It's material designed for those who are tired of seeing themselves only through the eyes of others. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. And it is precisely from this dependence on the gaze of others that the fifth attack is born, the most silent of all, so discreet that it is almost never recognized as an attack. It makes no noise, causes no visible insomnia, and doesn't seem dangerous at all. It happens before any request is made. It's the habit of giving up one's own desires before anyone even asks for them. Choosing the restaurant that the other person prefers, even if you don't like it. Accepting a schedule that disrupts your week, just to avoid a request for a change. Swallowing an entire opinion just because disagreeing seems too difficult at that moment. Imagine a scale that adjusts itself, removing weight from its own side without anyone on the other side asking for it. No one pushed it. No one demanded it. The scale itself decided on its own that it was safer to be lighter on one side. What if no one had ever asked for this sacrifice? What if, most of the time, the other side of the scale didn't even know that a weight was being silently removed, without warning, without consent, without real need? This is the cruelest attack of all, because it doesn't come from the outside. It is committed by Libra's own hand, against itself, day after day, in the name of a peace that no one asked for at this price. And the worst part is that this habit is usually so well trained that it doesn't even seem like a sacrifice. It just seems like a way of being. But that way of being shouldn't hurt so much when every now and then someone asks, "But what did you really want?" And the answer takes a while to come, because it's been a long time since anyone, not even Libra themselves, asked that question seriously. Realizing that you can lighten the load on your own plate without anyone asking completely changes how you deal with this silent attack. 5 attacks, all born from the same place. A sensitivity so refined that it learned too early to turn against its own master instead of serving him. The fear of others' discomfort, the court that never closes, the decision that becomes a hostage, the mask that cracks, and the silent self-betrayal are not character flaws. They are the same scale, poorly calibrated, trying to balance weights that should never have been placed there alone. And perhaps that's the most beautiful twist in this whole story. The scales that carry within them a Libra don't need to remain an internal battleground. The same sensitivity that today weighs every gesture, every silence, every unspoken word, can become the most precise instrument that exists to clearly see what truly matters and what only seemed to matter out of fear. It's not about ceasing to feel so much. It's about stopping using that capacity to feel against yourself. The scale may continue to tip. That's just its nature. But what it weighs and who it thinks about, that can finally begin to change. And when that happens, what once seemed like weakness slowly reveals the face of a strength that was always there, just waiting to be recognized as your own. None of these 5 attacks disappear overnight, and it doesn't need to. It's enough to recognize each one by name, feel where it resides in the body, and gradually reclaim the right to weigh one's own needs with the same seriousness with which one has always weighed those of others. A scale that learns to balance itself internally no longer needs an audience to prove it's right. It simply knows and continues there discreetly, functioning as it always has, only now, finally, in favor of the one who has always carried the burden.